welcome back to another episode of Jacey's Creek, where we do episode by episode, season by season, scene by scene of Pacey and Joey. I'm just them two. So if you would like to contact me in any type of way in this episode and you're like, wow, Emily, that is a wonderful point, then make sure to follow me on Instagram, that's Witter and Potter, TikTok, that's Pacey and Joey, and lastly, make sure to comment on the YouTube channel, subscribe, do all the things, and that's Jacey's Creek Podcast. So, without further ado, let's get into this. So, we are on episode 14 of season 3, the Valentine's Day Massacre. And I believe, could be wrong, this came out on February 2nd, 2000. The reason why I say I could be wrong is because half the time I am wrong. I think it actually half the time I really am wrong because this came on Wikipedia and we know how reliable Wikipedia is. And yeah, so let's get into this. So first we have scene 1 of Pacey and Joey, and this is one of my, I keep saying this, throughout every single episode of season 3, you will hear me say, and I warned you guys in the beginning of this is one of my favorite episodes, but this is seriously one of the cutest episodes with them, and it just keeps getting cuter, so just keep that in mind. So we have scene 1 of Pacey and Joey, and this is the first scene that we have, and they're inside Bodie's pickup truck, and Joey's in the driver, and Dawson's in the passenger, and secretly Pacey's in the bed of the truck. And Joey is driving to learn how to drive on a stick shift from Dawson. I don't think we need to get into the scene other than that because we just know how this is gonna go. Like Dawson trying to teach her how to do this. And this is kind of like learning it from my dad, because if you have not learned how to drive a stick shift, my dad always says, if you ever stuck on the side of the road, you need to learn how to drive a stick shift. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't even know how to drive, so this is gonna go well. And so Dawson says, you just kind of need to ease into it, alright? It's just very gentle, kind of take it, action, alright, so you want to do it right about now. And she stalls the engine, and Dawson says, oh, okay. Remember when I said about things stepping on the clutch before you actually try and shift? Is that coming back to you? You need to re and neutral. Put your foot on the clutch. That's it, okay? And Joey says, I don't want to learn how to drive anymore. It's too hard. Which, me too, but Dawson's like, you need to ease into it. You remember how I said that? Like, Dawson, no one's gonna learn from that. And is that coming back to you? It's so mean, though. And so Pacey's in the back, and he goes, are we there yet? I feel like it's like two parents and a kid in the back. He said, look, come on, kiddies. We are barely halfway down the driveway. What on earth have you guys been doing up there? And Dawson says, see, this is a shining example of why friends should not teach friends to drive stick. And Joey says, you're not exactly living during Dawson. And Dawson says, what is that supposed to mean? Takes everything offensively. Like, he's like, what's that supposed to mean? Like, you just called me something that hurts my feelings, which me too. Still. And Joey says, say anything. John Clemens teach Low Sky how to drive. And Dawson says, yeah. And she says, except if I remember correctly, he was quite the patient tutor, Dawson. And Dawson says, what I remember is she actually listened to his tutorial, which, okay, like, she was listening, she's just not comprehending on what you're saying. Like, obviously you're not a good tutor if you're yelling at her. And Pacey says, okay, kids, let's try to find the love up there, shall we? You know, Dawson, what do you say you and I invite Miss Josephine Potter to step out of the town with us? Unless, of course, you had prior Valentine's Day plans with the college boo. Which, I don't know why this makes me laugh. Like, he's not jealous, but at the same time he is jealous, and it's just pretty funny. And Joey says, no muscular midnight crisis. And Pacey says, excuse me? What kind of moron would never shove his nose in a book, then take his girl out for a Valentine's Day? And Joey says, Pacey, I know it's hard to get contrast for you to grasp, but some people actually dedicate their proceed of academic excellence. And Pacey says, okay, so then why don't you come with us? It'll be fun. And Joey says, it depends on Goofus and Gallons are up to for the evening. Which, again, I love how Pacey's, like, not jealous, but jealous at the same time. Like, he's, like, not gonna scream at her that he's jealous, or not gonna tell her that he's jealous. And I think that's just his personality. Like, he's not gonna come up and say, hey, like, I heard that you were on a date, and the fact is, like, I don't want you to have that date. Like, that's more of a Dawson thing than a Pacey thing, and Pacey's just, like, back here kind of aggressively, like, are you gonna go out with your beau tonight? And Pacey continues by saying, well, what happens with Matt Grimes is throwing a massive anti-Valentine's Day party. And Joe says, to a Matt Cornfield party, after everything we heard about him? And Dawson says, why wouldn't we? And Joey says, well, that surprised me, Dawson. And Dawson says, why? And Joey says, Matt Cornfield? I mean, he's not exactly your troop. He's a creep, and his parties are infamous to complete and utter dysfunction. And Pacey says, why are you coming down for a guy who wants to shed his skin and have some fun for a change? Okay, this has nothing to do with, like, what Pacey just said. Or it kind of does, but not really. So, yesterday I was listening to this podcast, and I was thinking about, like, I was just, like, looking and, like, doing my own thing, and then they, like, said a fun fact. They're like, did you know that you shed skin almost every second? Like, when you're vacuuming, you're basically shedding skin. And now I'm, like, in my room, and I was gonna vacuum, and I thought about that, and I go, what's the point? Like, that's just, like, when he said shed skin, that was what came to mind. Anyway, so Joey says, and why are you dragging him into seedy, devoted world? Register for a bottom feeder like yourself. And Pacey says, okay, guys, this is tug of war. My Morty is entirely in all we're getting to. We're gonna be late for school. And Joey says, as far as my idea of watching you two fool yourself appealing to me, I'm gonna have to pass on the whole party thing and make a blockbuster night. Me too, Joey. And Pacey says, you know, that sounds like a good idea, Joe. Who are you gonna get to drive ya? Pacey. Burn. And Joey just looks at him like, oh wait, I can't drive. I'm like, maybe I'll get Bodhi driving. Which is just funny to me. I love how Pacey's like, good point, but who are you gonna drive you? So anyway, the next scene that we have is scene 1 of Pacey. So Pacey and Dawson are on the sidewalk, and they're walking and talking, and Dawson says, can you imagine the life that guy is leading? And Pacey says, Oral Legend has to sleep with 6 cheerleaders in 1 weekend. I'm telling you, man, we're gonna go to that party. And Dawson says, I don't know, man, maybe Joey's right. And I've never heard Dawson say man until, like, this point. Like, I just thought about that. And Pacey says, aw, what is it? Is it the doubt that I'm hearing, young Skywalker? And Dawson says, I'm not exactly cut out for a career in highness. And Pacey says, Dawson, pick up the phone already. This is your call to action, okay? Your hero journey begins now, my friend. And Dawson says, Pacey Witter, the poor man's Yoda. Oh, that was so funny. And Pacey says, you know, I'm exactly always seen myself more as a Han Solo type. Roger's good luck. Devil may carry attitude. And Jack, being Jack, runs up to them. And Pacey says, hey, here comes my Chewbacca. I'm like laughing about this because this is so funny to me. Like, they're talking about Star Wars, and then Jack comes running up to him. He's like, hey, here's my Chewbacca. When I was little, I used to think that Chewbacca was Chuck. Is that weird? Anyway, so Jack says, what? And Pacey says, it's not important. Anyway, have any luck? And Jack says, yeah, I talked to some guys on the team. It turns out the glove club is completely confidential. I guess Conville and some of his buddies were afraid if, the cops get in the wing that they will be busted it up. But I did get the password, and Pacey says, what is it? And he looks on the side giving his profile, and Jack says, I know Kung Fu. What? Okay. Anyway, so then we have the next scene, which is scene 2 of Pacey. And Doug's police car is pulling up, and Doug is filling out some reports, and Pacey comes walking up to him. And Pacey goes, hey, Dougie. And the radio plays a love song, and Doug says, to what do I owe this Devin's honor? And Pacey says, just wanted to hang out with my brother. I always have to have an inner motive. And what is the something rated be going in there? And Doug laughs and says, oh, listen to that, boys, Pacey. Is it the no a cause for joy? I mean, that is the voice of Diva. And Pacey says, Dougie, if you continue in this manner, you're going to force to unleash a gay serial humor that will leave you breathless and quivering, okay? So, every time, I'm just going to let this out, because I'm not that type of person that would point it, every single time that Pacey's going to make a gay joke to Doug, because somebody would be pointing it out probably a million times. But every time Dawson's critique, they always make, a point, when is Pacey ever going to stop doing this? But honestly, it's just a sibling thing. Let's be real. Anyway, so Doug says, always a pleasure, Pacey, but I got somewhere to be. Pacey says, well, look, maybe you could ride me along with you tonight. And Doug says, why would I do that? And Pacey says, because, Doug, you're my big brother. I look up to you. I don't know why this was so funny to me, because Doug has been such a pain since season 1, and when Pacey wants something, he's like, I look up to you. And he continues on by saying, and call me crazy, but I think I want a fantastic to spend the night with the super cop Douglas Witter. And Doug says, not tonight, okay? And Pacey says, why not? Because you would be bored. Tonight I would still prefer Mildred's task of stalking of a golf course. And Pacey says, golf course, huh? And Doug says, yeah, a concerned citizen called a heads up about some big party at a golf course. So, hey, you haven't heard anything about a party, have you? Pacey said, at the golf course? No. I did hear about this bridge you're out on Witch Island, but not what you're looking for. Anyway, thank you, Douglas Witter. And that is the way that Pacey Witter figured out where the party is, which is kind of funny. I like how he figures out this is the way that, Doug is gonna probably be that cop to go over Cape Side, and it just kind of proves how small Cape Side is in a way, but also it feels really big. So then the next scene that we have is scene 2 of Pacey and Joey. So they're at the scene out on the golf course that evening that he mysteriously found. There's probably only one golf course. It was probably this one. And it is the evening time, and Pacey and Dawson are waiting, and Pacey is acting like he's playing golf, and Pacey says, here we are, the 18th green, Augustine. If Pacey Witter can sink this putt, he is the youngest master champions. You can see the tension etched all over his face of his girlfriend, acting cynical, Miss Heather Graham, and Dawson laughs, and he is about to make the putt, and Andy, Jack, and Kate, aka Jack's old girlfriend, comes up, and Andy says, hey guys, and he acts like he's about to lose the control of the putt, and Pacey says, putt, McPhee, you just made me drop my putter. I'm always gonna be cracking up about this scene. And Andy says, whoa, tragic. Dawson, Pacey, I want you to meet my friend Kate Douglas. And Dawson says, nice to meet you, Kate Douglas. And Kate says, any of the friends Jackers are instant friends. And Pacey says, Jackers. I believe she just said Jackers. And I think this is probably where, like, we didn't really see Pacey call Jackers until like season 5, I think, but that's always funny. And Jack says, well, Kate and I go way back. And Kate clears her throat and says, way back. Jack was my first boyfriend. And Dawson says, oh, way back. And Pacey says, yeah, I like to put out there. And Kate says that I recently broken up with my gay boyfriend. And I find myself highly charged in an emotional state, okay? Thanks for your time. And Pacey says, can we have a moment? Thank you. And he pulls Dawson aside, and Dawson says, did you just hear what he said? Or Pacey says, did you just hear what he said? And Dawson says, I know. I feel bad for her. Jack, that's not one, but 2 gay boyfriends. And Pacey says, okay, I wasn't so much talking about what she said, more like what she's saying. And Dawson says, and the subjects? And Pacey says that she needs to overcome the memory of her lost love. If only a brief time. She's looking to hook up, man. This is just turned to a teenage fairy tale. And you, my friend, are the big, bright, shiny star. I love how Pacey's just like automatically just encouraged Dawson to hook up. This is one of the reasons why Dawson thinks that he's doing something with Joey all the time. So Dawson says, huh? And Pacey says, nah. And Joey comes up to join the group, and she says, hey, and All says hi. And Pacey says, wow, that's odd. I mean, it couldn't be possibly Miss Josephine Buzzkill in front of me, because I'm pretty sure she was booed tonight. And Joey says, well, I come to make sure if Dawson moves to the dark side. And Dawson says, Joey, I appreciate your concern, but I'm quite capable of taking care of myself. And Joey says, someday you'll thank me, Dawson. And if Pacey insists on being the devil on your shoulder, then at least I will be the angel. And Pacey says, fine then, come with me, sweet little angel, be my guest. You are not, and I repeat, not gonna ruin this night for us. And I love like the finger that it gives her, like he just like points the finger like, dude, not gonna get ruined my night. Which is kind of funny when you think about it. So then it goes back to the point that Pacey was kind of being a jerk to her, but it was like, Joey's like, I'm gonna save you from this little angel. And like, I'm gonna be the angel on the shoulder. Which I think it just kind of describes Pacey and Joey. Like, one of them is always gonna be out there, like, looking out for each other. So then we have scene 3 of Pacey and Joey, and they're on the golf course, and there are 3 golf carts driving. Pacey and Joey are in the first one, Andy and Jack are in one, and Dawson and Kate are in the last one because Dawson is taking Pacey's advice apparently. So Joey says, well, that was a subject as an Oliver Stone film, and Pacey says, what was that? And Joey says, shoving Dawson on that girl. And Pacey says, what, are you jealous? And Joey says, no, I'm worried about him, Pacey. And Pacey says, what? And then Joey says, because he's lost. I mean, can't you see it? And Pacey says, I wholeheartedly contribute with you. Dawson is lost right now. That's why he needs an accurate as much as life experience as possible. And Joey says, Pacey, why does life experience need to translate into wild parties and random hookups? And Pacey says, what would you do, what would you have the man do? Join a book of the month club? So, I went on to say that Pacey is his number one thing, where he is sex, and that's how this episode is going. Like, he's going to be talking about sex the whole entire episode. I feel like it kind of switches every so often. Like, he doesn't talk about it, he's just insecure and looking for something to do. But I think this goes back to his insecurities because he needs to, like, find something that goes with him. But I also love how Pacey isn't automatically going to that girl, like, hey, wanna hook up? Because I feel like in another sense he knew, like, he couldn't do that. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of like it. And then we have the next scene, which is scene 4 of Pacey and Joey. And they're at the party, and there's a large group of people, which I like how they know, like, there's, like, a party going on that Doug Witter could probably be, like, investigating with. And they easily, like, don't concern themselves with it. Okay. And so there's rock music playing. And Kate says, rock on. And Joey says, Scream 3 is playing on Thrill. We could still catch that. And Pacey says, easy, bother. And Joey says, how do you think these guys are going to respond when they find out we're crashing their party without an invite? And Andy says, good question. And one we probably should have considered before we got here. So who wants ice cream? I love how Andy and Joey are both going through the same thing in their head because they both have anxiety, and they're like, so what do we say we just leave here? And Jack says, question and one we probably should have considered before we got here. So Jack says, we made it this far, party people, we might as well. And confront Matt comes up and says, this is my party, and recall inviting and I don't recall inviting any of you. And Pacey says, well, you did it. and Andy says, our mistake. So we should be going now. And Matt says, do you know the password? And Dawson says, I know Kung Fu. And Pacey says, okay, and Jack says, well, okay. And Kate says, okay. Matt says, not so fast, kids. You know about the entry fee, don't you? And Pacey says, oh, yeah, of course. It's about $5 to cover this, right? And Matt grabs a tray of Jell-O shots. And Matt says, if you like to join us, I need you to get each one of you down these bad boys. Come on. All the cool kids are doing it. Which is kind of I was always taught, if a cool kid is doing that, don't do it. And Pacey, says thank you, and he gets one. He says, well, thank you, Mr. Cosby. And Kate gets one, Jack gets one, and then Matt goes, Betty, Veronica? Okay, Riverdale. And Andy says, actually, I'm the designated driver. And Matt says, well, what about you, doll? And Joey says, it's an attraction offer, although I'm sure you're dying of the chance to hold back my hair when I evidently vomit up the nasty cat beer. I'm going to be taking a rain check. And Dawson takes one of the cups. Dawson being Dawson, which I don't think Dawson should ever drink because he's mean when he drinks. So he's kind of Pacey at the same time too. And Joey's just funny, so I say, rock on. And so Joey says, you're actually consider participating in this nonsense? And Pacey says, why can't you just let the man make his own decision? And Joey says, Dawson, this isn't you. And Pacey says, your concern for Dawson is starting to get borderline pathetic, Potter. And Dawson says, guys, we're not on the gates of hell, and you're not arguing over my soul. And he takes the Jell-O shot. And Joey's always been mad about this, but Pacey's like, alright, hee. Which, I don't know why he kind of does that, but alright. And so, for me, I kind of think, the point where Dawson is kind of, what's the right word? Dawson's kind of I'll just do it just to kind of make Joey upset, but not really at the same time. And Pacey, it just, he just wants Joey to stop being obsessed over Dawson, really, and I feel like she hasn't done this. Last episode, she wasn't doing that. She was into AJ, and I feel like every time she was into AJ, she wasn't into Dawson, if that makes any sense. But in the same sense, she still is with AJ, so why is she, so concerned about what Dawson's doing, So then we have scene 1 of Joey, and we're in the golf cart, and Joey and Andy are riding back, and Joey says, how does he do it? And Andy says, who, Dawson? And Joey says, no, Pacey. He always managed to get us into these situations. And Andy says, it's his cocky charm. And Joey says, cocky, yes, but I think the village idiot rotates eco charm. And Andy says, well, he means well. And Joey says, why is he so irritating? And Andy says, if you think about it, I mean, he has this big dopey dog. And Joey says, you're right. It's like he runs through the house, destroying everything in his path. And he looks at you like, what? What did you expect? I'm just a dog. I don't know why. It always makes me laugh. Like, I love how she says that. And and I love how also she's talking to Andy about this. Like, she's obviously going through so much feelings, but there is another point. She may be concerned about Dawson, but I think she's more concerned about Dawson because she knows Pacey, and especially now when them two are, like, hanging out all the time. And so for this, it's kind of like, you know, like, she's more concerned about Dawson, but she's also more concerned about Pacey and what Pacey's gonna do. And I just want to read this one more time. Like, when the dog thing, she says, you're right, it's like he's running through the house, destroying everything in his path. And he looks at you like, what did you expect? I'm just a dog. Like, that is, like, the best analogy with Pacey. That is underrated line for Joey Potter. And Andy says, you know what you sound like? And Joey says, who? And Andy says, me, right before I started dating him. And there's sirens. And Doug says, you in the golf cart, pull over. And then Doug comes in with the light, flashing the light in their eye probably. And he goes, evening, ladies. Which, okay. So, one thing I do like is Joey's face when Andy says that. Like, you know who you sound like? Me. And Joey just looks kind of concerned and just like, well, yeah, I guess. And so, with, like, Andy and Joey finally getting to talk about this, I feel like Andy should have known when later in the season, like, this is kind of what's gonna happen. When Pacey and Joey end up together, Andy acts all surprised, but then they have this conversation. So why does she act so surprised about it? So then we have Doug, and then we continue with scene 3 of Pacey, who is at the party, laying down in the tree, doing beer pong when the sirens come in the background. Again, why is Pacey at this party if he knows his brother is going to be there? Like, there's probably only one golf course. And Pacey says, whoa, guys, whoa, what did I do wrong? It's kind of funny when he says that. And he sees some feet walking towards them, and then notice Doug, Deputy Doug. And he says, hello, and Doug's just staring down at him. So then we have scene 5 of Pacey and Joey. So they're inside a jail cell, and everyone is there, and Kate is walking around while everyone else is sitting on the benches. And Kate says, did you guys have like a party like this every weekend? Because I say this is the most fun I really had in a long time. Also, Kate is later, I think this is really funny, and I forgot to mention this. If you have watched Life Unexpected, I've said this before, but Jack, aka Keir Smith, is in it, and he is one of the main characters. And the girl that's in this is actually the wife or the fiance in the show, or the wife, I can't remember. That's her sister, Amy, and so I like how Kate is the name for this, but Kate is actually the name for the wife in that show. I know it's really complicated, but I just have to point that out. And so Kate, like Jack says, I'm really glad to hear you say that, Kate, because I think there's something you really need to know. And Andy starts whispering to Jack, you're not going to tell her in an enclosed space. Kate says, hey, I heard that. Tell me what in that enclosed space. Jack says, hey, look, I know this is the most optimistic time, alright, but look. And Kate says, oh, I know this. You're not over me, are you, Jack? And Jack goes, no, that's not it. I'm not just getting over thing, but the thing is, I'm gay. And she goes, oh my god, we had, which, too much information. And he goes, yeah, we did, and we were good. And Jack says, thanks, but that doesn't actually mean burying the situation. I'm gay. And Kate Joey says to Dawson, "Are you gay too?" And Dawson's like, "Me? No." She's like, "Are you sure?" And she says, "Because particularly only gay guys will kiss me." And Joey's like, "You kissed her?" And Jack says, he started to, but less than a minute my stomach was in that moment. And Joey says, "Dawson, what were you thinking?" And Dawson says, "I wasn't, haha. For the fleeting moment, I actually wasn't thinking, and it felt good." And Kate says, "To take advantage of a girl who was drunk, vulnerable, and clearly on the rebound. I mean, is it just me, or Dawson is the jaw-dropping out of character?" Dawson says, "What character, Joey?" And the little skit in your head that you have labeled me Dawson, which I think this goes back to the last episode where Andy was like, "You're I'm sorry, I have this picture inside your head of what a good guy is, and you're that kind of person." And I feel like Andy understands that, but Joey doesn't. And so Dawson's like, "You labeled me, and now I'm not the person you want me to be. And yeah, I'm out here making a fool, but you have to let me make some mistakes sometimes." And she kind of has this label on Dawson every single time, where Dawson is this guy who does not make mistakes, which he makes plenty, and he doesn't do anything bad because that's Pacey, like, obviously. And I feel like I heard this before, labels create boxes, and she created a box with Dawson and Pacey. So for this moment, it's kind of like what it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to be. And so she thinks throughout this whole episode, like, oh, this is a Pacey thing, and obviously Pacey dragged Dawson into doing this. But yeah, but like at the same time, like Dawson is trying to figure out who he is, and holding him back really isn't going to get him anywhere when you really think about it. Like, holding him back is just going to treat him like a little kid, and no one really wants to feel like a little kid in this scene, especially like Dawson, because he probably feels like, oh, Joey's holding me back again. And so Pacey, and like this voice goes, "Here we go again, kiddies, for the 476th time this hour, our #1 Billboard chart topper, The Ballad of Dawson and Joey. Will these two kids ever get back together? Boy, I sure hope, Joe." So, and Joey says, "Look, Pacey, would you stay out of this?" And Pacey says, "Of course, far be from me, lowly creature that I am, ever churn the sacrifices of the Dawson and Joey dynamic. I'm sorry that I just kind of feel the way to treat him so fascinating, Potter." And Joey says, "And how's that, Dr. Witter?" And Pacey says, "Like he's some weird, naive little virginal creature." And Joey says, "What's your problem?" And Pacey says, "Oh, I don't have a problem. I mean, I am the Greek chorus, but observe and entrance." And Dawson says, "Pacey." And Joey says, "When did you adopt this mean streak?" And Pacey says, "Come on, Joey. You and I, we always know each other for snack and grapple and pop out the ripple." And so for this, I think, like Joey says after he says that, right, that good nature, but to my recollection, I don't remember it ever being pointed out and never hurtful. And I feel like this is because, like, in season 1, and kind of season 2, but not really, especially in season 1, they were always mean to each other, and that was a Pacey and Joey thing. But when they became friends and they started knowing each other, like, they started being nicer, like the B&B and how Pacey took care of her with that. And it wasn't the fact that, like, Pacey was, like, they had this mean streak behind them. It actually, like, when you really think about it, they never, like, were mean to each other up until season 1 and episode 1. Like, they have, like, this back and forth where, like, they don't really want to talk to each other, but they kind of, like, joke with each other. And so for Joey to be like, "Oh, like, I don't remember you, like, being so mean to me," like, it kind of made sense, like, because Pacey wasn't really mean to her up until, like, that point. But even they're, like, supposed to be, like, this mean friendship, like, only because of Dawson, and that's the reason why they're so mean to each other. But they always took care of each other. And I feel like, yeah, she was taking care of Dawson in this episode, But really, in a way, she was kind of taking care of Pacey as well, because them two were trying to, like, figure out what they were and how their friendship is, and they're obviously guy and girl friendship, so that leads to so many things. And so Pacey continues by saying, "Or being taken serious," and Joey says, "But how can I not take this serious, Pacey? You said one harsh, nasty thing another to me tonight," which I don't think he was being a little bit nasty to her. I think he was kind of like pointing out the obvious. And so she goes, what did I really do to deserve all that? And Pacey says, "You didn't deserve to do it. The drunken glove in the corner just pleased shared frustration. I mean, honestly, do you have any idea how exhausting it is to pre-witness the stance that you two have? 1 week you're soulmates, and the next you're giving it up to the greater good. I mean, do you think it's possible sometime soon you can make up your mind, please, and revert that you two treat this little saga of here and make up a guy puke?" Which he actually does run to the sink and puke. But I think Pacey is right. Like, it is true. Like, one episode, I've been saying this for a while, like, one episode they're soulmates and they're everything and they love each other and they care about each other, and then the next episode they hate each other. And I get what they're trying, like, Pacey's trying to say, because he's like, "Can you make up your mind?" And I feel like it's not so much like Pacey saying it for Joey, but I think it's so much like Pacey wants to be with Joey, so he has to know his boundaries of, like, what they're gonna be. And obviously when it comes to AJ, like, AJ's not even mentioned in this episode, but them two are, like, a thing with Joey and him. So therefore, like, Dawson, it doesn't really make sense. Like, Dawson is kind of being brought up here. Like, Pacey's right. Like, why all of a sudden, like, you care so much about Dawson when sometimes you don't even care about him? Like, what is the point of being, like, a good angel and you being the devil when, like, honestly, like, there's nothing going on? Like, why do you care so much? And I feel like last episode, it kind of makes sense that Joey's kind of going back to Dawson, because last episode, Dawson was like, "I'm so lost," and Joey's just, like, kind of concerned about it. But really, like, it's the fact that, like, Dawson and Joey are, like, this item that does not make sense, and I think it's kind of frustrating Pacey, because he's like, "Okay, are you soulmates or are you not soulmates? Are you together or are you not together?" And that's how we all feel in this, like, season, like, whether you're a Dawson and Joey fan or not, or a Pacey and Joey fan, like, or none. Like, I feel like there's always that thing where, like, okay, are they together or are they not together? Are they together or are they not together? And I don't think this changes at all in season 4. So then we have the next scene, which is scene 6 of Pacey and Joey, where they're later in the jail cell and everyone is sitting there quietly when Doug and Mitch show up at the door, and Doug says, "All right, everyone out," and they begin to go, and Doug and Mitch, who is eyeing Dawson in disappointment, and Doug says, "Everyone," and the rest moves and with Pacey. And Doug says, "Sup you, little brother. Dad thinks it might be a good idea if you spend the night," which kind of makes sense, but I wonder how brutal his dad's gonna be later. So then we have the next scene, which I would take, like, pictures, and it has, like, scene 4 of Pacey, and I forgot I did this for his eyebrows were so creepy, and every single time I see this picture it makes me laugh. So there, Doug and Pacey are in the jail cell, and Doug opened the door carrying 2 cups of coffee, and he goes, "You're rather informed tonight," and Pacey says, "How bad do I suck, huh?" And Doug says, so it seems to be the problem." And Pacey says, "Pacey, there's no problem, Dougie." And Doug says, "Oh, come on, Pacey. I found you hanging from a tree completely wasted, huh? So, what is it, a girl or something?" And Pacey says, "What? Okay, so it's a girl. Who is she?" And that's what Doug says. And Pacey says, "You know, Dougie, it's really not that important, okay?" And Doug says, "Okay." And Pacey says, tell you something, huh? She is really, really annoying." And Doug says, yeah, and Pacey says, yeah, I mean, this girl is amazing. There is not a single object on the face of the planet she doesn't have the option about. It's mind-boggling. And Doug says, well, that certainly sounds like a nightmare. And Pacey says, not me. It's quite like that. I mean, you gotta understand that this girl is really smart. So she's usually right. And when she argues, it comes from a beautiful, pure place. How could you fight against that? Especially if you're a smartass like me. And Doug says, is she pretty? And I feel like this kind of, before I go on to the next part, I feel like this kind of goes back to when Joey was kind of arguing with Pacey, he never really yelled because I feel like he was like, man, like, you know how like in Castaway when he was like, even when she's yelling at, like, she goes, even when you were yelling at me, or even when I was yelling at you, and he goes, even then, like, he wanted to kiss her. And I feel like this goes back to them because even when she was yelling at him, he really wanted her, and it showed in this episode because no matter what she said or what she did, like, the love that Pacey had for Joey was so important and so amazing that he wanted her, and he found her beautiful, and no matter what he did, like, he was like, how can I fight that? Like, how can I fight her sarcastic remarks? Because I want her so bad. And so Doug asked is she pretty? Pacey says, she is pretty. She's very pretty. She's the kind of pretty that gives you butterflies, you know what I mean? And Doug says, yeah, never lose those butterflies. And Doug says, what? Or Pacey says, what? Doug says, you know, that's maybe what sucks about getting older. Somehow along the lines, you just lose the butterflies. So the question is, what a little brother is, what are you going to do about it? I feel like Doug so much doesn't lose the butterflies. I feel like it's this type, like, where you see, like, someone that you don't really fall for anymore, and you don't really know what your sexuality is, and so that's why Doug was losing the butterflies. And so when Doug says never lose the butterflies, I think Pacey really does take that to heart. And so when he says, the question is, little brother, what are you going to do about it? Pacey says, do, and Doug says, yeah, do something. Take action. And Pacey says, no, I don't think you're really grasping properly the gravity of the situation, Dougie. You see, if I was actually to do something about this, there is a really strong possibility that the sun will cease to shine. The tides would have increased the rise. In fact, I'm betting there is a good chance that the world will crack and Cape Side would become home of the huge hellmouth that would screw forth endlessly humans of the monster and demons that would choke on this. This is such, like, so dramatic. Making them fall to their knees and pray before I took action. That's what we're really talking about here. And I feel like he's talking about Dawson. Like, in Pacey's, like, drunk state, he's talking about Dawson and how, like, he knows that if Dawson figures out his feelings for Joey, he will go crazy. Because in season 1, episode 10, where we have, maybe that's it, right? Yeah, where we have the double date episode, it was so much like when Dawson figured out his love for Joey, it was just because Pacey said it. So he's kind of scared that, like, if he kissed Joey, Dawson would suddenly go like, oh yeah, I have feelings for Joey, you can't kiss her. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess, like, what is the purpose of me working on this if Dawson was just gonna come over and be like, no, you can't date her. And I think that's what, like, Pacey is scared about. But also, in another aspect, I think Pacey is kind of scared that what Joey's gonna react like. Like, they become close friends now, and when he fights with her and he wants to be mean with her and Joey fights back, he is scared that Joey's just gonna cut off all ties with him because she doesn't like him or something. And so when Doug says, maybe, look, Pacey, in my experience, you don't cross many people that'll give you butterflies. You just don't. And if you tell this girl how you feel, well, it will be like if you don't tell this girl how you feel, it will be like spending the rest of your life in a personal prison. And he opens the door for Pacey, and Pacey goes, hey, Doug, Thank you. And I really like this scene with Doug and Pacey. It's kind of like when Doug and Pacey on season 3, they kind of change because the aspect of them two changes. They fight less than season 1. Like, you really see this growth of Dougie and Pacey, like Deputy Doug. And I really like it because it's less of how Pacey was teasing him or how Pacey was like messing with Doug. It was more like an aspect of how they are now. And he's giving him brotherly advice that Pacey really needed to hear. Like, he really needed to hear someone say, hey, like, I need you to give me this, like, you need to do this, and this is how you do it, because obviously Pacey has older siblings, which we don't see Gretchen until season 4, but I kind of wonder if, like, Gretchen knew about Joey and Pacey. That was just my thought. And so when Doug is like finally coming over and saying like, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it, because one day you're going to get older and you're going to lose those butterflies and you're never going to know if that was just because the person or that was just how it is. And I feel like this is really good, like a good speech for Pacey, and I feel like this is one of the ways. So now we know that Jen knows, Mitch knows, Andy should have known, but she doesn't, whatever, and Dawson should know, but he doesn't, and lastly, Doug knows. And I feel like that was, like, he knows who the girl is, obviously. Like, it isn't Andy, because them two broke up, but I generally think that Doug kind of knew it was Joey, because later in the season, like, we all know that Doug knows. And so I feel like in this way, Pacey was kind of like given this advice because Doug doesn't want his brother to go through the same experience that he has gone through. Like, Doug is later, and we find out in season 6 and the last episode that he is gay. And episode 20, I think 2030, we figured that out in season 6. And so he doesn't want his little brother to go through the same pain that he went through, and he doesn't want Pacey to like know how it feels to not know how to love someone, which makes me think, how many people have Doug like gone out with or like liked from a boy to a girl, man to woman thing. So then we have the last scene, which the last scene is one of our favorite scenes about Pacey. So he does the B&B, and now it's the driving scene where they're outside of Joey's house and it's morning, and Pacey is running to the door and he knocks on it, and Joey opens to see him, and she is like mad at Pacey, and she begins to shut the door on Pacey's face, and he goes, wait, hold on please, just what I said last night was really out of line. And yes, I was drunk, but more to the point, I was plain wrong. And I want you to know that I'm really sorry. And Joey says, well, I was worried about you too, Pacey. And Pacey says, me? Why? And Joey says, well, because as Satan himself could lead Dawson into fiery pits of hell, he could still emerge the moral code into a tank. But I think no one's worrying about you right now. Which is true. Like, no one is worrying about Pacey, and everyone is worried about, like, she's worried about Dawson and how Dawson's gonna go. And I think, like, really at the end of it, she's like, no one's worrying about you and how you're doing, like, and that's something that I should be worried about. And Pacey says, so, like, he's, like, trying to, like, get over his butterflies, and he says, so what you're really saying then is that you've given the highly dysfunctional nature of our relationship, and this is actually how you press consent for me. And Joey says, you've got to learn to read the lines beyond the banner, Pacey. And Pacey says, right. And Joey says, so we're finished here. And Pacey says, no. Actually, there's something else. And Joey says, something else? And it looked like he's going to, like, kiss her or do something. And he says, yeah, it's just something I've been meaning to tell you. Look, Joey, and he's like, we all know that he's about to tell Joey that he likes her, but he stops himself and he doesn't do it. And that is the part that really, like, what if he told her right then, right now, like what they did? And I feel like it went back to season 1 on the double day episode where he does tell her, and I feel like that kind of like hit him. And he's like, wait, I can't tell her, because if I tell her right now, it's gonna mess everything up. And I feel like in a sense Joey was kind of waiting for it, because if you see her face, like, it's like her face was kind of like, oh, he's gonna kiss me right now, isn't he? Like, when you know, you know. And she says, you're like lingering on the crutch, okay? I know you're a little bit too eager into the gear, but that's not a good idea. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you're gonna have a lot of damage in your transmitter. So, what I was thinking, if you want to, I could show you. And Joey says, now? And Pacey says, yeah. And Joey says, okay, Pacey. And then they're in the pickup truck, and Joey's trying to drive it, and Pacey says, okay. And Joey says, now? And he goes, not now. And she goes, now? And he goes, now, shift. And she changes gears, and he goes, huh? And she goes, huh, I did it. And he says, yes, you did. Haha, congratulations, spotter. We're finally getting somewhere. And that is the end. I have a big smile on my face because it's one of my favorite scenes with them two, because there's such a difference when Dawson teaches Joey how to drive. You know what pops in my head in the scene, and have you ever heard the song Driver's License? I got my driver's license last week, just like we always talked about, and you were right there beside me. And I drew through the suburbs. How could I ever love you? I don't know the words. But that's what it reminds me of, because basically Olivia Fryer, I don't know her last name, like, is talking about is talking about the driver's license and how the guy taught her how to drive, and now she's driving alone. But obviously that doesn't happen. So the difference between Dawson and Pacey in this episode, there's major difference. So, like, Dawson is trying to teach Joey how to drive, but later Pacey tries to teach Joey how to drive. And the big difference is when Dawson and Joey get into a fight, they like fight about her days. And when Pacey realizes that he's wrong, like, he goes up to talk to her, or Joey goes up to talk to him. And he knows that she's mad. Like, she begins to shut the door in his face, and he's like, hold up, wait a minute, please, like, don't shut me out, like, I need to tell you something. And so when she's like saying that she's worried about him, like, he probably has these butterflies that are going around his head, like, man, this woman, like, really must care about me. And so that's kind of what he's thinking about. But in another sense, I feel like it's more like Joey was worried about him, and not just Pacey. So I feel like she's kind of like going back to her safety net, which is Dawson. And so Dawson always tries to make Joey and him something, but she goes back to Dawson because that is always her safety net. That is her safe person. And Pacey over here is just this wild person. Like, if Dawson could go to the pits of fire and hell in his moral, like, with his moral code, then, like, what about you? Like, I feel like no one's worrying about you, because Dawson may be fine, but I don't think you're fine. And she's obviously caring about Pacey, probably as a friend, but also in another sense, I feel like she's caring about Pacey because she does have these certain feelings for him, and we will see that very soon, because, guys, it's only 2 episodes until Cinderella. So there's a lot there. Just saying. And then, well, really, the next episode would be it. And so, when we go back to this, it's kind of like it's slowly kind of coming up to where Pacey and Joey would actually be together. But really, in a sense, like, he wants to tell her, but he also is scared of Dawson's reaction and scared of her reaction. So therefore, he does it, and he teaches her how to drive. So when I say, like, I feel like Dawson's always kind of scared, or Joey and Dawson are kind of like always back and forth, and Pacey was right. Like, one episode they hate each other, the next episode they do, like the next episode they hate each other, and I feel like in this episode suddenly they're like loving each other again. And like, it's not wrong when Pacey says that, but I feel like Pacey knows, like, Dawson will always care for Joey, and Joey will always care for Pacey, or Joey will always care for Dawson, so why does he even bother? Like, I feel like that is his mentality right now. And it's not so much that, like, he wants to not tell her, but I feel like in a sense, like, he's scared. And we always talk about how Joey always runs away from Pacey and Dawson, but because they're scared, and Pacey even knows that, but I feel like secretly he's scared right now, and he wants to take Doug's advice, but he doesn't at the same sense, because what if he takes Doug's advice and it doesn't end up well? And that's really what we see in this episode. So, if you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel. That's Jacey's Creek Podcast, where I post every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's also other platforms that you can listen to, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to review this podcast with kind words, please, only. Make sure you comment, subscribe, share, whatever you need to do. And also, you can catch every episode again on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would love to hear your thoughts on Instagram. That's Witter and Potter. And my TikTok is Pacey and Joey. I hope to see you guys again at Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I love hearing your guys' thoughts, so please, 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 please make sure to comment down below. Bye, guys.